Brooklyn and Nicola fly from Los Angeles to London, and David and Victoria know they've landed in London. So they were ever so surprised not to see them.
For years, the Beckham family projected an image that seemed almost untouchable, polished, powerful, and perfectly controlled. From football stadiums to fashion runways, they built a brand that blended discipline, glamour, and global appeal. To millions watching from the outside, they weren't just a family, they were a dynasty. But now that image appears to have cracked wide open, revealing a conflict far more complicated than anyone expected. At the center of the storm stand Brooklyn Beckham, his wife, Nicola Peltz, and her father, billionaire investor Nelson Peltz, a man some insiders claim never believed Brooklyn truly belonged in his daughter's world. What began as quiet whispers of tension has erupted into a deeply personal and very public rift. Reports describe legal warnings, emotional statements, fractured communication, and a divide that may prove difficult to repair. The explosive question echoing across media and fan circles alike is this: is Brooklyn acting entirely on his own convictions, or has he been pulled into the gravitational force of the powerful Peltz family network? Behind the curated Instagram smiles and affectionate interviews, observers suspect a deeper struggle over influence, loyalty, and identity. The breaking point appeared to come when Brooklyn publicly addressed the conflict, posting a message that stunned fans and reignited global attention. In it, he accused his parents, David and Victoria Beckham, of misrepresenting the truth, prioritizing image over family, and, most painfully, showing disrespect toward his wife. There was no ambiguity in his tone, no attempt to soften the message. He made it clear he stood firmly beside Nicola and expressed no interest in repairing the relationship under current circumstances. What shocked many wasn't just the accusations, but the sense of finality in his words. There was no suggestion of reconciliation, no hint of ongoing dialogue, only a stark declaration of loyalty and distance. Yet those close to the Beckham circle insist the statement did not emerge in isolation. According to multiple reports, something significant occurred in the days leading up to the post. Sources suggest David and Victoria Beckham attempted to reach their son privately, sending a handwritten letter directly to him rather than communicating through representatives or social media. The decision itself raised questions. Why such a personal gesture unless traditional communication had already broken down? By that point, communication reportedly had collapsed. Some insiders claim Brooklyn had issued a formal notice requesting that his parents refrain from mentioning him publicly and that future contact be handled through legal representatives. The move shocked those within the Beckham orbit, but what unsettled them even more was the growing belief that outside influence might be shaping Brooklyn's decisions. Brooklyn, however, rejected those claims when he spoke. Publicly, he insisted he was acting independently and dismissed suggestions that Nicola controlled his choices. He framed his position not as manipulation, but as personal conviction, the result of drawing boundaries he felt were long overdue. According to sources familiar with the situation, the letter David and Victoria sent was not confrontational. It was emotional and deeply personal, expressing concern and a desire to understand whether their son was safe and well. They weren't seeking to assign blame. They were seeking reassurance. They wanted to know the child they raised was still reachable beneath the headlines and speculation. But rather than easing tensions, the gesture appeared to deepen the divide. Within days, Brooklyn's public statement followed, hardening positions and intensifying scrutiny. Supporters framed his stance as a declaration of independence. Critics saw it as evidence of influence and estrangement. What remains clear is that this conflict is no longer confined to private conversations. It has become a public fracture watched by millions, a collision between family loyalty, personal identity, and the immense pressures that come with legacy, power, and global fame. Brooklyn has insisted that for most of his life, it was his parents who shaped the direction of his choices. In his view, stepping away marked the first time he truly took control. Yet observers remain divided. While he describes his current life as freedom, critics argue that his world now appears closely intertwined with the Peltz family's orbit. He spends significant time within their residences, moves in elite social circles connected to them, and reportedly communicates with his parents through intermediaries rather than direct contact. To some, this looks less like independence and more like assimilation into a different power structure. What began as a family disagreement has, in the public imagination, evolved into something larger, a perceived struggle between two influential families and the question of where loyalty ultimately lies. Many accounts trace the emotional fracture back to the wedding, and more specifically, to the now widely discussed first dance. Brooklyn has claimed that what was meant to be a private, meaningful moment became deeply uncomfortable, leaving him feeling humiliated in front of guests. Those present have described a noticeable shift in atmosphere. One moment, celebration filled the room. The next, tension settled heavily over the crowd. Witnesses say Nicola became visibly upset and left the room in tears. Guests later described the moment not as a minor misunderstanding, but as an emotional rupture, a collision of expectations, boundaries, and family roles playing out in real time. What should have symbolized unity instead became, for some, a lingering source of pain. According to individuals familiar with the aftermath, the wedding marked a turning point. Insiders claim Nicola drew firm boundaries regarding her future interactions, while Brooklyn faced what he perceived as an impossible emotional balancing act. Some sources suggest he felt forced to choose between preserving marital unity and maintaining family harmony, and he chose his marriage. Since then, the distance has reportedly widened, invitations declined, family gatherings missed, and communication reduced to near silence. Sources claim Nicola has avoided events where David or Victoria might be present, while attempts at reconciliation have struggled to gain traction. Whether these decisions reflect self-protection, firm boundary setting, or deeper influence depends largely on perspective. One undeniable outcome is that Brooklyn now appears largely separated from the family identity that once defined him. While Nicola remains a visible presence in elite social circles, another figure looms quietly in the background: her father, Nelson Peltz, a billionaire investor known for strategic discipline and corporate influence. Peltz has built a reputation for precision and control in high-stakes environments. According to some reports, he has never been fully convinced by Brooklyn's professional direction, which has included photography, culinary ventures, and lifestyle branding. He has not voiced criticism publicly, but insiders claim his private skepticism has been evident. In elite business circles, silence can carry weight equal to words. Another detail often cited in discussions surrounding the marriage is the prenuptial agreement signed before the wedding. Such agreements are standard in high-net-worth unions designed to clarify financial boundaries and protect family assets. Reports indicate the contract ensures that, in the event of a separation, assets tied to the Peltz family fortune remain protected. For the Beckhams, observers suggest the concern has never been financial. Rather, it is emotional security. If Brooklyn were to experience both marital breakdown and estrangement from his parents, he could face profound personal isolation. Sources close to the family say that possibility weighs heavily on David and Victoria. Despite the distance and public tension, those familiar with the situation insist one thing remains unchanged: the door is not closed. Friends say David and Victoria would welcome their son back without hesitation, prioritizing reconciliation over pride. For now, however, the silence between the families continues, a quiet space filled with unanswered questions, wounded loyalties, and the fragile hope that time may yet soften what conflict has hardened. Brooklyn has made it clear that he isn't reconsidering his decision. There have been no signals of compromise, no hints of reconciliation behind the scenes. He stands by what he said publicly, insisting he spoke his truth and felt justified in stepping away. Meanwhile, his siblings continue building their own lives, pursuing careers, appearing at events, and publicly supporting their parents. The Beckham family image continues forward, but one piece remains visibly absent. Into that absence, voices from Brooklyn's past have begun to emerge. Friends who knew him before Nicola, before marriage, before the weight of family politics, have started sharing their perspectives. What they describe is not flattering for anyone involved. Instead of villains and heroes, they portray a young man shaped by pressure, expectation, and a life lived under constant scrutiny. One of the most unexpected voices came not from fashion, entertainment, or social circles, but from football. A former youth coach from Brooklyn's time at Queens Park Rangers spoke publicly about his memories. He avoided taking sides. He did not defend David and Victoria, nor did he endorse Brooklyn's current choices. Instead, he described a childhood far more complicated than the public ever saw. He recalled a teenager weighed down by anxiety and pressure, growing up in an environment that never truly felt normal. By the age of 14, Brooklyn was reportedly accompanied by full-time security. To outsiders, that level of protection signaled privilege. To a developing teenager, it could feel like living behind invisible walls. The coach noted that fame and luxury do not guarantee peace of mind. From the sidelines, he sensed unease, a feeling that the spotlight surrounding Brooklyn created moments that felt isolating rather than empowering. He stopped short of blaming anyone, but his message landed heavily. Brooklyn did not grow up with normal freedoms, and that absence of normalcy can shape emotional resilience in lasting ways. That perspective feeds into a more uncomfortable question. When someone grows up inside a system where love, loyalty, image, and power are tightly intertwined, disentangling identity later in life can be extraordinarily difficult. Observers have noted a striking contrast between the two families at the center of this conflict. Nicola did not leave her world to join Brooklyn's. She remained rooted in the environment she has always known, close to her family, surrounded by a familiar support network, and financially independent within a powerful household. Her foundation remained intact. Brooklyn's trajectory moved in the opposite direction. He distanced himself from his parents, loosened ties to the family structure that defined his upbringing, and anchored his emotional future within a single household, the Peltz family orbit. For many observers, that imbalance is what raises concern, not because Nicola is manipulative, nor because Brooklyn is weak, but because isolation changes dynamics. When one relationship becomes the primary emotional anchor, influence can deepen naturally and quietly. That shift does not require control or intention. It emerges from dependency, proximity, and shared loyalty. Then there is Nelson Peltz, a figure who has remained largely silent despite the headlines. No public denials, no clarifications, no overt defense of his son-in-law. Those familiar with his reputation say silence in his case is rarely accidental. Known in business circles as decisive and unsentimental, he is described as someone who values competence, clarity, and results over image. Insiders have suggested he may view Brooklyn as a young man still searching for direction, navigating the burden of a famous surname that opens doors, but does not automatically earn respect. Whether that perception is fair is beside the point. In elite circles, perception often shapes reality. Some observers suggest that as tensions with the Beckham family escalate, skepticism in those circles could deepen. In environments where stability and loyalty are prized, publicly severing ties with one's family can be interpreted not as independence, but as volatility. That perception carries weight regardless of personal motivations. Another factor quietly shaping the narrative is Brooklyn's ongoing search for identity. His professional path has included photography, culinary ventures, lifestyle branding, and media projects. Each pivot has drawn scrutiny from the public and, according to reports, quiet doubt behind closed doors within elite circles. To critics, the shifts suggest uncertainty. To supporters, they reflect experimentation and the freedom to define one's own path. For Brooklyn himself, the search may be less about career labels and more about autonomy, the effort to build a life not pre-written by legacy. Strip away the headlines and speculation, and what remains is a young man raised inside extraordinary visibility, attempting to define himself outside of it. That process is rarely linear and almost never easy. The deeper question at the center of this family fracture may not be about loyalty or influence at all. It may be about identity, who Brooklyn Beckham is when he is no longer framed by the Beckham empire, and who he becomes while building a future within a different sphere of power, expectation, and belonging. While David Beckham built his empire through discipline, repetition, and relentless consistency, Brooklyn's path has looked far less defined. That contrast cuts deep because the Beckhams represent legacy and endurance, while the Nelson Peltz world operates on results, leverage, and measurable impact. When those two value systems collide, friction is almost inevitable. According to one insider familiar with elite business circles, Nelson has never been fully convinced that Brooklyn adds tangible value, financially, strategically, or symbolically. In that lens, Brooklyn risks appearing less like an equal partner and more like someone still finding footing inside a highly structured power environment. Whether that assessment is fair or harsh, perception carries weight in circles where influence is currency. Meanwhile, people close to Victoria Beckham and David say they witnessed a gradual transformation. They describe a shift that unfolded slowly rather than explosively. Brooklyn deferring decisions, allowing others to speak on his behalf, and private family conversations suddenly moving through legal channels. To them, that change signaled something fundamental had shifted. Those close to his parents insist he once spoke differently about his family. They say he didn't frame them as controlling, didn't describe himself as constrained, and didn't carry the level of resentment that later surfaced. Brooklyn, however, has rejected that portrayal outright. Still, the timeline tells its own story. As his marriage deepened, his connection to the family he grew up in appeared to loosen. One of the most revealing aspects of the saga may be who has stayed out of it. Brooklyn's siblings have avoided public involvement entirely, continuing to support their parents, share family moments, and live their lives without severing ties. That contrast has fueled speculation that Brooklyn's break may be deeply personal rather than evidence of a broader family dynamic. It leads to an uncomfortable question many observers keep asking. If the Beckham household was as controlling as Brooklyn suggests, why is he the only one who chose to walk away? Online, he's been praised by some for asserting independence and setting boundaries. Behind the scenes, however, insiders say the emotional cost has been severe. Casual phone calls have disappeared. Drop-ins at home no longer happen. Warm family dinners have been replaced by formal filtered communication rooted through intermediaries or legal representatives. Once relationships reach that level of distance, rebuilding trust becomes a climb. Few families manage without time, humility, and intentional repair. Most celebrity family disputes follow a familiar arc: shock, silence, then a polished reconciliation. This conflict feels different, deeper, and more structural. It is not only emotional, it sits at the intersection of two powerful families, two cultural ecosystems, and two philosophies of identity and control. With one son positioned between them, the longer the standoff continues, the more permanent it begins to feel. That raises a difficult question few want to voice aloud. What happens if Brooklyn ever changes his mind? Walking away can feel clear and decisive when driven by conviction. Returning requires humility, forgiveness, and willingness on all sides. Sources close to David and Victoria say they remain open, quietly hoping their son might reach out one day. Others suggest that after prolonged silence, reconciliation is rarely simple. If Brooklyn sought reconnection tomorrow, the path back might not be as open as it once was. Time hardens hurt. Pride can entrench distance, and when pain calcifies into silence, even love struggles to find expression. Yet whispers suggest a possible turning point. Insiders claim an upcoming major family milestone, potentially a significant Beckham celebration, could place both families in the same room for the first time in years. The tension surrounding such a moment is palpable. Would proximity spark healing or reopen old wounds? Those close to David and Victoria say they have quietly left the door open for a private truce, hoping Brooklyn might initiate even a small gesture, a call, a message, a sign of willingness. On the Peltz side, some reportedly view reunions through a different lens, not emotional risk, but reputational risk. In an era where a single photo or overheard remark can reignite global headlines, optics carry strategic weight. Still, pressure builds with time. Public attention has not faded. Both families understand that unresolved fractures invite ongoing speculation. For the Beckhams, reconciliation could begin healing a deeply personal wound. For the Pelt circle, maintaining control and composure protects stability and image. Between healing and optics, love and legacy, pride and perception, the next move may define not only relationships, but how this chapter is remembered. Whether this long-rumored meeting leads to reconciliation or sparks another wave of headlines, one thing feels certain. When these two powerful dynasties occupy the same space again, it will not unfold in obscurity. Every glance will be analyzed, every gesture dissected, every word weighed for hidden meaning. The world will watch closely, waiting to see whether the Beckham family can move toward wholeness or whether the divide is hardened into permanence. As whispers of a reunion grow louder, the spotlight intensifies. Photographers linger near familiar venues. Tabloids prepare competing narratives. Social media waits for a single image capable of igniting global debate. If the moment comes, observers will ask the same question. Does this bring closure, or does it reopen wounds that never truly healed? Sources suggest David Beckham has privately told friends he is ready to let the past rest if it means restoring peace. Victoria Beckham is said to be more guarded, protective of dignity and wary of public spectacle, yet still quietly hopeful that healing is possible. Their positions reflect two emotional truths familiar to many families navigating estrangement: the desire to reconcile and the instinct to protect. What remains unknown is how Brooklyn Beckham might respond if confronted face-to-face with parents he has avoided for so long. On the Pelt side, the emotional terrain appears equally complex. Nicola Peltz has largely stepped back from public drama, and insiders suggest she feels pulled between loyalty to her husband and a desire to avoid another media storm. Meanwhile, Nelson Peltz remains characteristically silent, a silence that invites speculation. Some interpret it as strategic restraint, others see a deliberate choice to let time reshape the narrative. Whatever unfolds, privacy may prove impossible. Too many eyes are watching. Too many narratives waiting to be written. This feud has already evolved into one of the most scrutinized family conflicts in modern celebrity culture. The next chapter could reshape how the story is remembered. Those present at a recent quiet gathering described an atmosphere thick with restraint. No cameras, no official statements, just guarded arrivals and careful distance. Polite nods replaced embraces. Smiles felt formal, not warm. For a few minutes, time seemed suspended between past hurt and uncertain possibility. Then, according to witnesses, a simple remark broke the stillness. David reportedly said, "It's been too long." The words were understated, but their emotional weight shifted the room. Conversations followed in hushed tones. Tears appeared. For a moment, the scene looked less like a headline and more like a family confronting its own fragility. Yet tension did not dissolve. It lingered, a reminder that healing is rarely immediate. Nicola remained close to Brooklyn throughout, composed and observant. Victoria and her son shared a brief emotional exchange that left others holding their breath. There were no accusations, no raised voices, only the raw difficulty of speaking across years of silence. By evening's end, both families departed separately, avoiding cameras and public comment. Insiders say nothing was resolved, but something moved. Not reconciliation, not yet, but a hairline fracture in the wall that had stood for so long. Whether that opening widens or closes remains uncertain. Would Nicola support deeper reconciliation? Would Nelson welcome renewed ties or view them through a strategic lens? For now, it appears the Beckhams inhabit two parallel realities, one moving forward together, the other standing apart. Brooklyn maintains he has no regrets, holding firmly to the life he has chosen. David and Victoria, through friends, continue to express hope, a willingness to wait as long as necessary, even if waiting becomes its own quiet burden. At the center remains Nicola, steadfast, visible, and interpreted differently depending on perspective. To some, she is a devoted partner protecting her marriage. To others, she is a decisive force shaping the narrative. Truth, as often happens in families and in public life, likely exists somewhere between those interpretations. One thing is undeniable. Brooklyn Beckham's path has diverged from the one long imagined for him. Whether time softens the divide or pride preserves it, this story has already become a modern legend, a portrait of love, loyalty, power, and the cost of choosing sides. And now the question lingers. Is this the beginning of healing, or the quiet acceptance of distance that may never fully close?